Adams, Tennessee, 1817-1820. There are stories woven so tightly into the fabric of American soil that they can no longer be dismissed as simple legends. Stories that don't ask to be believed, they simply persist. They were passed between families, whispered to travelers, written down by 19th century newspapermen, and every retelling sounded as if some deeper truth lay behind it, something no one could fully explain. One such story unfolded in Robertson County, Tennessee, near the small settlement of Adams. There, among the rolling hills stretching toward the Red River, stood the farm of the Bell family. And it was on that land, between the years 1817 and 1820, that events took place which later became part of American folklore. But if one looks closely at old documents, witness statements, and newspapers of that era, a pattern emerges. Behind the outer layer of the supernatural lies something undeniably real, a sequence of events witnessed and recorded by living people. This is not a ghost story. This is a story about fear slipping quietly into ordinary life, about things that happen where no one expects them, and about the people who tried to explain the inexplicable. Chapter 1. A Land That Felt Wrong. The autumn of 1817 in Tennessee was quiet and gentle, with long dusks where the sky grew rose-colored over the fields. The farm of John Bell lived its usual life, harvesting, tending to the tobacco crop, caring for livestock, household chores. John, a solid, even-tempered man, was well respected in the county. People knew him as an honest farmer and a man of his word. But during this period, the first oddities began, the ones that later formed the heart of the legend. Documented event number 1, John Bell's encounter with a strange creature, autumn 1817. One evening, as John was returning from his fields, he noticed something crouched among the brush. A large, dark, dog-like creature with an unusually long muzzle sat motionless, watching him as though studying him. Later, Bell described it as a dog, but not exactly. Two neighbors would later describe seeing a similar animal near the tree line. Their accounts, preserved in family records, match John's description almost word for word. When Bell raised his rifle, the creature vanished into the darkness. He did not speak of it immediately, convinced it was fatigue or shadows playing tricks. But this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. Noises in the night. At night, the Bell house was full of familiar sounds, as the crackle of firewood, the wind outside, the settling creaks of old timber. But starting in late October, the family heard things that did not fit the ordinary rhythm of the home. At first, light tapping. Then, a sound like fingernails scraping the walls. Then, the unmistakable scuff of bare feet moving across the hallway. John Bell inspected the house many times, searching for animals, checking the attic and cellar. He found nothing. Documented event number 2, confirmed reports of tapping and footsteps, 1817 to 1818. Richard Powell, the schoolteacher who later married Bell's daughter, Betsy, kept written notes of his experiences. He stated that he himself heard the tapping and footsteps when staying overnight in the house. Their neighbors, the Johnston family, one of the most respected families in the county, reported hearing the same while visiting the Bells. This was no longer a private concern. It became something neighbors spoke about in hushed tones after shuttering their windows at night. Chapter 3. Betsy. The most unsettling events centered around John's daughter, Betsy Bell. She was 12 then, a quiet and well-mannered girl, admired by her teacher, Richard Powell. Late in 1817, Betsy began describing sensations she could not explain. Something touching her hair at night, tugging at her blanket, or tapping on the wall beside her bed. Her parents assumed it was childish fear, but the situation escalated. Documented event number 3, physical interactions, witnessed in 1818. Historian Martin V. Ingram references testimony by William Porter, a close family friend. He witnessed Betsy being tugged forward by some unseen force, not violently, but clearly enough to cause alarm. Skeptics today argue it may have been psychological stress, but in 1818, rural Tennesseans had no such vocabulary. They described only what they saw. And soon, the family began hearing what would later be called the voice. Chapter 4. A voice heard by many. This is one of the most debated and fascinating aspects of the story. According to multiple witnesses, the knocking and scraping gradually formed itself into something resembling speech. Documented event number 4. Independent witnesses of unexplained voices. 1818-1819. Neighbor John Johnston, a man known for his honesty, wrote that the sound was faint, like a woman attempting speech but unable to form the words. At times it became clearer, enough to distinguish names. Several guests reported hearing the voice call specific members of the family, especially Betsy. Different witnesses, different nights, yet the accounts are consistent, and consistency across multiple 19th century sources is rare. Chapter 5. Captain Jackson's Visit. By 1819, rumors spread far beyond the Bell property. People spoke of something no one could explain happening inside the house. Few dared speculate openly. Meanwhile, one man decided to see it for himself. Andrew Jackson, then a militia captain and future U.S. president. Documented event, number 5, Andrew Jackson's Visit, 1819. This event is recorded in several 19th century biographies. Jackson arrived with a small entourage. As they approached the Bell property, their horses suddenly halted as if stopped by an unseen barrier. The animals refused to move forward, snorting and stamping nervously. Jackson remarked, "Gentlemen, it seems we have found the place where a force beyond our laws holds sway." That night, Jackson's men heard footsteps and whispering. One soldier, who earlier boasted he would drive the witch out, claimed something struck him so hard he fell to the floor. By morning, Jackson left, saying, "There is more truth in this matter than anyone here wishes to admit." Chapter 6. The waning year of 1819. With each month, the disturbances grew more intense. Betsy became increasingly nervous, and her mother looked exhausted. At night, the house seemed to live a life of its own. Sometimes footsteps echoed across the floorboards. Sometimes a soft tapping on the bedposts made Betsy curl up under her blanket. And at times, the most unsettling of all, a quiet, almost tuneless humming drifted through the rooms, like the echo of a forgotten lullaby. But the heaviest shadow fell not on Betsy, but on John Bell himself. John Bell's mysterious illness, 1819-1820. This is a historical fact. John Bell grew increasingly ill during his final years. His symptoms were vague, inconsistent, and rapid in their progression. He complained of sudden weakness, sharp pains in his jaw and stomach, moments of disorientation, collapsing without warning. Doctors of the period examined him, but their records were sparse and unhelpful, little more than notes about episodes of great distress. They could not determine a cause. Neighbors described his condition as unnatural, though such wording at the time often meant simply unusual or without clear explanation. By late 1819, The once strong farmer appeared to be fading in front of his family's eyes, and the noises in the house continued. Chapter 7. The Final Winter. In December 1820, John Bell's condition deteriorated rapidly. He rarely rose from his bed, and his speech at times became slurred and weak. One morning, the family found a small vial in the room, something none of them recognized. This is recorded in family accounts and later writings. Confused and afraid, they showed it to a local doctor. No one knew what it contained. To test it, they gave a few drops to a cat. The animal died within seconds. Shock spread through the household. Who brought the vial? How did it appear in John's room? Why was it so deadly? None of these questions were ever answered. On December 20th, 1820, John Bell passed away. Did the disturbances stop? Almost immediately, the strange events began to fade. Tapping became less frequent. The voice, once loud and intrusive, grew faint. By the spring of 1821, the noises ceased altogether. It was as if whatever force had been present withdrew after John's death. But why? No one then, or now, has a definitive answer. Chapter 8. What was it? Historians continue to debate the Bell Witch case 2 centuries later. There are several interpretations, each with supporters and skeptics. 1. Mass hysteria. Some argue it was collective stress magnified by rural isolation. Yet this theory fails to explain the mutual consistency of witness accounts, especially from those outside the Bell family. 2. Political manipulation. Others suggest a plot against John Bell, who was involved in local disputes, but this theory lacks documentation and contradicts the respect he held within the community. 3. Psychological trauma. A possibility often discussed today, but far less understood in 1819. However, it does not explain the physical symptoms witnessed by multiple people. 4. Folklore amplification. It's true that over time the story expanded through retellings. But the 5 core events, the creature, the noises, Betsy's experiences, the voice, and Jackson's visit, are all documented in records of the time. Whatever happened on the Bell farm sits between history and folklore, occupying a place where the line between the two becomes thin and blurred. And perhaps that is why the story endures. Chapter 9. Silence. After the storm. After 1821, the Bell family lived a quieter life. Betsy grew up, married, and moved away. She often spoke of the events with a calmness that surprised those who questioned her. She insisted she never again experienced anything like what happened in Adams. The farm itself remained standing for many decades. Travelers passing through Robertson County sometimes asked locals about that house, but few were eager to talk. Not out of fear, but out of a kind of rural respect for the past, a reluctance to stir old memories. People in Tennessee understood something that outsiders didn't. Even if the stories were embellished, they were built on a foundation of real events. Today, only a small marker stands near the site of the old Bell property. It does not dramatize or sensationalize. It simply acknowledges that something unusual happened there, something that left a trace deep enough to last 200 years. And sometimes, if the wind passes through the trees just right, the place feels quiet in a way that almost seems watchful.